Good morning, all the viewers of this webinar. Uh, the topic of our webinar is importance and process of enterprise resource planning, its implementation in small scale industries and medium scale industries. The very trendy topic for today's webinar. Before we start, I extend a warm welcome to one and all present here who will be joining us in this particular webinar. Uh, Before we start, let me introduce you today's speaker, Mr. Kalpesh Anjaria. A brief introduction I should give to this today's speaker. Um, about the education qualification, he has done his bachelor's of engineering in mechanical field. Then he completed his master of business administration in marketing. Having more than 15 years of market experience, he has worked with many industries like Tata Motors, Tata Education, Naukri.com, and then last firm that he has worked with is Engineering Technique. After that, he has started his own company named SalesKit Software Solutions. So he is a solo proprietor of his firm, SalesKit Software Solutions. He is a member of BNI Business Network International since 2017 and currently having more than 500 customers in Vadodara district from the SSI, small scale industries and medium scale industries. Sir, we welcome you to the Parul University, and we hope that whatever you share, your knowledge, your experience of ERP implementation will be very beneficial to our engineering students. Over to you, Mr. Kalpesh.
Yeah, thank you so much for your warm welcoming words, ma'am. And good morning to all. Good morning, namaste. I am Kalpesh Anjaria. As already introduced, that I run my firm, SalesKit Software Solutions. So today you have given me an opportunity to, make you understand the process of ERP and its implementation into the system. I would like to, share my knowledge of more than 15 years where I have worked with the different companies, and I would try my best to make you understand the process of the implementation of ERP and as well as the importance of the ERP. Okay, so let's start. So the brief introduction about my firm, SalesKit Software Solutions. So basically we started business in 2013 and we are into the business of providing ready to use CRM and ERP solutions. So CRM stands for customer relationship management and ERP basically stands for enterprise resource planning. So we have more than 700 clients. So the client includes the traders, SSI and MSIs. Okay, so let's start the presentation today. So we'll start with the definitions. What is ERP, right? And I have quoted the word the dream. The dream means the every company wants to implement this software in their premises or in their plant. And this is the dream of every company, that we should have a one integrated system which can handle our each and every task. So as the name suggests, it's enterprise resource planning. So ERP attempts to integrate all the departments, all the functions across the company, and it shares the data unanimously for the purpose and the process of maintaining a smooth and very regular functions of any company. Right? If installed correctly, it will give a tremendous payback. So why every company wants to implement this ERP? Because once you implement these solutions, your everyday task becomes very easy, fast, and very effective. So in terms, it will definitely give you a profitability. Okay, so let's understand the different business processes which are involved in a company. So once you go to any manufacturing unit or any process unit or service unit, so you will find some departments which are like Salesforce department. Sales department basically gathers the informations, it handles the inquiries, sends the quotations, and makes the sales process easy. Second is supply chain management. In supply chain management, basically they involve the vendors and the suppliers or the transporters, which make sure that the right raw material reaches to them in a particular time, and as well as they can deliver the products to their customers in a time. Third is inventory management. Inventory management is basically management of goods, right? It's a raw material, stock, consumables, everybody. So that things where they want to manage, into the company, that's called the inventory management. Then finance and accounting management, business analytics, production planning, and supplier induction. So these are the typical business processes which each and every company goes through, right? And the process which connects each and every department, right? So that is called enterprise resource planning. I hope this is clear. Okay, in simple words, an enterprise resource planning is a system or a software applications with a centralized database that can be used to run an entire company, right? The centralized database is a highlighted word here. Centralized database means the data of each and every department, each and every process are there into one system. So that if you want to utilize that data, let's say for example, you are into sales department and you are taking an order of, let's say, 1,000 pieces from the particular customer, but you don't know that whether you have that in stock or not. So you have to check. If you have that data available on your PC, on your mobile, right, you can readily take the order. If you don't have, you have to ask to the particular department or you go through the hierarchy, and that makes the process tedious. If you have the ready data available with you, you can make some particular decisions which can faster the process of sales. So these are some few more points. All data in ERP system are stored in a single central database. As I said, the data entered in the one part of the company, as I already explained, right? Let's say you enter this data into inventory, that we have the inventory of so and so, 1,000 or 2,000 pieces with us. So the sales department can access that data and they can utilize this data immediately. An ERP can be used to manage an entire organization's operations. Companies need to purchase module for an ERP that represents the different functions. Now, once you go for an ERP, implementations, that ERP can be implemented as a whole or maybe in a modules. So that modules basically are Salesforce modules, or maybe a production module, or maybe a supply chain module, or maybe an accounting module. So this is a typical, centralized database, and all data comes to a particular server. So before ERP, as you can see, there were computer systems which were handling a sales, production, logistic, billing, everything, but that was a separate data. So once you want to see some particular data, if the person from the billing or the accounting department wants to see the sales data, he needs to go to that particular software or maybe a particular system. So that was a decentralized database management. So that basically delays the order and keeping the computer system, and there might be errors into reaching and accessing that data also. So that was a slow and tedious process, where if you implement the ERP, the data comes to a centralized system from each and every department, can easily access the data and make the decision in particular output. So how basically ERP comes into the picture, and how the evolution process of this particular ERP takes place, right? So in 1960 or 70s, so I think everybody knows that in around 1956 or 57, so Fortran was introduced as a programming language. So that was the starting of in computer programming, where the people started computer programming and making the software. So first, the introduction of the system, which we call the MRP, that is Material Resource Planning. So initially the companies were adopting a system where they can manage their material, like say raw material, the consumables, or the finished goods into a particular and proper manner, so that they can have the smooth functioning by taking a material and delivering a material. So that was the basically initial phase of ERP system, which we called as MRP. Secondly, that MRP basically enhanced in coming years, like say in the next decades, 1980s. So where they have integrated the particular functions like accounting function or HR function into that. Let's say you want to make some particular production of 1,000 pieces or 2,000 pieces in particular days, and if you don't have that manpower with you, right, how can you produce that? So if you want to make sure that manpower is available, we have particular manpower or we have particular finance to purchase the raw material, the integration of accounting department and HR department was very essential. So they have started with implementation or integration of this particular department first. Then the phase comes in 1990s, where the proper terms called ERP, that is Enterprise Resource Planning. So where each and every department is connected, and also they are focused on the particular clients, and they are focusing on real-time transactions. Real-time transaction means, let's say for example, you have entered the order into the system, and it directly reflects to your purchase department that we have received the order of 10,000 pieces and we have to deliver in this particular time period. So please buy the raw material. So that is a real-time transaction where the data, once you enter, is available to each and every person. And the current phase is which we call is extended ERP or the ERP2, where it is on a focused client and optimizing the whole business network, including the suppliers and clients. Now what happens? But in initial phases, the ERP was basically limited to the factory premises where they were using the data inside. But now they have connected their customers and their vendors also with that particular system. So once they want to make some transaction, they can directly inform their vendors also. They can have interaction with the customers, like say I already explained, like CRM. So through using customer relationship management, they can have the feedback of clients, have the new orders, and as well as they can place order to vendors online. Vendors can also confirm and something. So this is extended ERP, which is currently used. Right. So as I said, the ERP evolutions, if you go into the details, it's basically industry oriented and transition from internal view from business network within the industry. So they shifted from their internal view to network, or maybe a network of vendors or customers or particular kind of industry. And with the implementation of HTML or maybe other forms of softwares, now the vendors and customers are also connected, and the other agencies, like if you see now, once before the 2017, the tax was paid on particular website. It was a sales tax different, VAT was different. Now government has made the centralized agency, it's GST. So where you can upload each and every data into the one particular website. The same way, if you have the centralized system, you can connect each and every individuals which are concerned with your company, to a particular system. Right. So now this ERP are basically not a simple functions. It's industry-wise, specific industry. Like say pharma has a different ERP, because pharma has a different process. Manufacturing has a different ERP, or the service industry has a different ERP. So now we'll see that what are the modules there into ERP and how to implement that. So you see, when the ERP vendor, like my company, where what we do, if any company wants to develop an ERP, they meet us, and we have a series of meeting to understand their modules and what are their processes. So we note down each and every points into that. That let's say in sales functions, what they do actually, when they market, how they get a lead, how they follow up, what are their process of quotation, what are their pricing policy. So we discuss with the clients. Now same way we discuss the production process, what are the work order schedule, how they manage the work orders, how they assign the work orders, how they execute the productions, and with that what is their supply chain management integration. So let's say if I'm producing some items and I'm ran out of raw material, so that is a bad situation in the company, where they have the manpower, they have the machines, but they don't have the raw material. So it is a wastage of time. So to rectify that, it is a back-to-back process where once you are utilizing a raw material and that raw material goes in the inventory to certain level down, so it automatically puts the order to the vendor that we need this kind of material within this time period. So it makes sure that you have a particular raw material at the particular time. Right. This will reflect the best practices that the process within the giving industry, and simultaneously what we do, we also suggest them the right processes. If some company is not using the right processes, or they have the gap into the process, or they have some bleeding area where their profit is draining, so we suggest them a right processes, and by that we also smoothing their processes. The implementation of ERP system is excellent opportunity to improve their business practice, as I said. Right. So now what is the ERP implementation process? So to understand in a very short and sweet form, the ERP implementation process includes installing your software. Now this is a one part. Now software is a part where we design each and every function like sales function, marketing function, accounting function, production function, inventory function, purchasing function, supply chain management, and accounting functions into a system, and we integrate those systems in a way the process is operated, because there are many companies who operate some particular process and they don't want to change that process. So we make our system like that they can adopt the system. Otherwise, if they don't have any system in place, we suggest them a right practice and we design the ERP accordingly. So that is the one part where we install the software. Now this software can be installed in 2-3 different ways. First, if they want to use in their own premises, the software can be installed in their LAN, where they have a particular server. We implement those software into the server, and then through that server they can access into the particular area, or maybe a LAN or WAN. Second thing, which is most popular now, that is cloud computing now. So we can implement or install the software onto the cloud also, from where if the company has a multiple plant, let's say there is one company in Baroda who has a plant in Dahej and Ankleshwar, and if they want to connect these plants, so either they can have the central server which are on cloud, from there they can access the data. Right now, the second, the most important thing is transferring all the data from financial and transaction data from old format to new format. Now this is a very essential and very crucial point, because what happens once we are in a process of ERP implementation, the company is already running. The company have some data which are very important data, connected data, and on those data basically company is running. So we cannot discontinue that data. So we have to transfer that data from a current format to this new ERP format, so that people can readily utilize those data. Otherwise, if you want to generate a new data into a new system, it's a very tedious process, and people will not accept that. Third thing, mapping their processes. Now what is the mapping of processes? If you are implementing an ERP and you say now you have to work like this only, right, where the process they are following a different process, and that process is not met with that, they have to change the entire process. They have to train their users to the process, and then they can implement. Now that is a very tedious and time consuming job, where the people will not be interested into that. So we have to map their process into the system, and simultaneously we have to train their users, right, to actually use the software. Now this is the entire process where we go step by step and implement the ERP into the particular company. So the process will determine whether the ERP implementation is success or a failure. So as I said, if you are implementing an ERP which is very tedious, which is not user friendly, or which is a different process than their current process, so there are more chances of failure of this ERP rather than have a success. So we have to make sure that the ERP system implementation is in such a way that company should get benefit in a minimum time and with the minimum efforts. Okay, so these are some typical stages of ERP implementation and methodology. So once we meet with any company, and when the company decide that we want to implement the ERP, so we suggest them that first you assemble your ERP project team, because implementation of ERP is not a small task. Let's say company like L&T or company like SR, they have a big team. Like say there are 20,000, 30,000 odd people working in different departments in different locations, right? So how to implement, how to gather the process? So we need to have some ERP project team which particularly looks after the process data gathering, process compiling, and then implementation of this ERP into the particular company. So that team is very crucial. So that basically team minimum comprised of 3 people, or it can go up to 20, 30, 40 people into a particular large organizations, where there will be ERP implementation project head and their subordinates. Right now, second is a plan. So we have to have a particular plan where if we implement the ERP, how we will shift from the older system to a new system. Because simultaneously it should be done. We cannot do that like let's stop all the operations and then change to ERP and then restart again. It should be a smooth process where the process is running and we have to implement. It is the same like you are operating a patient where patient is live, right? So you have to open the chest and the open heart surgery, but you have to be very cautious and careful. If you are not cautious and careful, the patient may die. The same with the company, right? If the change management plan or the process is not proper, right, the company's operation can fail and it can go into the financial losses. So we have to make the particular plan. So how to create an ERP change management and implementation further. Third is estimate of your ERP implementation budget. Now this is a very crucial point. So there are many companies who are with the tight budgets, or they say that we have this particular budget and we have to fit into this, because not every company can spare those amount of money. Like say if you go for ERP implementation of companies like SAP, Oracle, or Microsoft, it can run into crores. If you want to implement only a one module like production module into the big company like SR, so it will cost you around 2 crore 3 crore rupees minimum. With that, implementation charges and other things are separate. So this is a very crucial point where you have to decide a tight budget onto that, and how you will spend that budget on particular module like development, training, and implementation. Right, and then the stage comes where they start their data migration. Now this stage is when you design your software, when you install that software on that particular server, and now you are starting your data migration. The data migration also needs a particular plan. So what data you will migrate first, what data will follow, and how the data will set into the system in sequential phases. If this is very crucial, because in current scenario, data is the money. Your data, your process figures are the indications how your company is going. What is your next plan, what are your future plans into this. This data migration is very crucial, and how to and when to start this data migration also needs a very particular plan. Once you are done with the data migration, now you can start the training of users to use this particular ERP. Now this is a very crucial phase where you are telling to the current employees that, look sir, you were working in this particular process in this way. Now you have to change the whole process, and you have to enter the data into the particular system, and now you have to work like this particular process. Now this is a very tedious and very time consuming job, as well as it takes a lot of training. So you need to give your users a particular training how to use this particular ERP. With that, you have to convince also that this ERP is for their benefit. And this ERP, because once you are in the process of data migrations or a training, every people will see like say we are working fine, right? So we are already into the profit and we are doing fine. So why to migrate? Why to shift? And this will add to our current workload. So we are working already very hard, and now you are telling us that you also enter data into this particular system. So this takes a lot of training and consultations to the users, that this is for their benefit, this is the benefit of the company. So you have to you take this training and you start implementing. So this is also a very phase. It basically phase runs around 3 to 6 months as per the different ERP or maybe a module. So the companies can go for particular modules also, or the entire ERP, depends upon the company. Okay, and what to do during your go live? Now this go live, now this is a phase when company is directly shifting from old process to a current new process. Until now they were running both process parallelly, because they cannot leave one process, because they were working traditionally like this, and now they have to shift on this. So currently the company was on like say 2 boats were there, and the company was on the putting foot on the 2 boats. Now they have to shift into the particularly ERP system only. So when they go live, they decide a particular time point. From that, they say that now every data and every system will work on ERP only. So that is the point where they call it's go live. Right, and then the ultimate process of evaluating the project, where they decide so whether we have implemented this ERP in a right way or not, if the process is smoothen or not. If not, they go for changes, the revisions and everything, and they make sure that the ERP fits their process. So that is from my side basically. So I think I have made you clear what is ERP and how the ERP basically evaluated from basic functionality to the entire company covering processes, and how basically we introduce to the particular company. So I'm open for question and answer. Thank you. Hello. 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 Can you hear me? Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Fine. So I'm done from my side, and I'm open for question and answer, if any.
Yes, sir. Sir, one question from the mechanical sixth semester student.
Mm-hmm.
That is, how an engineer
Mm-hmm.
from a technical background, as they all are from technical background, how
Right.
will they implement the ERP modules
Mm.
um, uh, when they join the organization? So he has just drafted a rough question like that. So
Mm-hmm.
can you elaborate on that?
So basically, I think what I understood from your question is that they have the question that they are the technical persons and they are basically an engineers, right? And
Yeah.
how they can get an opportunity where they can join a company as an employee into the department of ERP implementations or maybe ERP functions, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's say every firm, so SSI or maybe an MSI, so they work on particular process, and the process is mostly a technical process where the production is concerned. So if you understand the production process, right, so that is the first phase where you can understand the production process, and starting the implementation of ERP into the production process, where you can enter into the system using your technical knowledge. Then you can expand your knowledge, and you can be an expert on each and every function, and you can be an ERP implementer yourself.
The second question, sir, from fourth semester student of mechanical.
Yeah.
The question is, what is the difference between ERP and the other softwares
Mm-hmm.
that is prevailing in market, and how ERP is on the higher side?
Uh, okay, so to answer this question, ERP is a very general term, right? It's ERP is enterprise resource planning. So there are different companies into the market who are making an ERP. So ERP is a category of software which includes each and every functionalities of that particular organizations into one system, right? So that's where we call an ERP. So yeah, there are companies called like SAP or maybe Microsoft or Oracle, or there are a lot of many companies, small companies who are making a customized ERP for particular organizations. So ERP is a basic terminology. It's not kind of apple to apple comparison with other softwares. So ERP is different for each and every industry. So industry wise ERP differs, industry wise processes differs. So you have to make a customized ERP for each and every one. So if you buy SAP, right? SAP is a German-based company, and they are basically a number one currently into ERP implementation, right? So they will give you a particular module, and they will modify that module according to your needs then, right? Got the point?
Okay, sir. I think your answer will satisfy the curiosity of students. The next question from a student of computer engineering, he is asking that what is the implementation and what is the use of CRM?
Okay. So as I said, CRM is a part of ERP. So CRM basically is concerned with the sales related activities. So CRM starts with the raw customers, where the each and every company wants their sales to be increased. So they find some particular leads from a market, they nurture that leads, and they sell the products into to that customers. So CRM is basically a functionality, right, which starts from getting an inquiry and maturing that inquiry and converting them to sales. So CRM basically includes inquiry management, quotation management, and sales management activities.
Okay, thank you, sir. And next question, I think so many questions are coming from students.
Yeah.
Uh, they are asking you about the term called MRP. So, will you be
Mhm.
able to explain them?
So MRP is basically material requirement planning, right?
Yes.
So as I said, that every company now the companies has continuous production processes, right? You cannot you see that people are working in a shifts, first shift, second shift, third shift, because company is running 24/7. So company needs a right raw material at the right time to have the functions open. If they don't have the raw materials in time, and they like the there is a gap in the scheduling of the reaching the raw material to the company and production, so they are suffering the production losses, because each and every plant runs on a tremendous pressure to fulfill the customer's requirement, because they have the lot of orders. So that basically material requirement planning is focuses on that, where you have the right material at the right time. And I think they have heard the name JIT. Just in time is the system basically for that implementation.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. The next question is related. I think it is related with your journey to this field, being a
Mhm.
technical person, or you completed your masters in the mechanical engineering field. The
Yeah.
question is how you motivated yourself
Mhm.
to start this particular firm, and how your journey of entrepreneur uh, uh, starts. So can you elaborate, so that will give the motivation to our student, that if they want to venture something in life. Yeah, go
Right,
ahead, sir.
definitely. So as I said, I was working with Tata Motors or maybe Naukri.com and any Tata Educations. I worked there for around 7 years, and during that journey, so I was into sales and marketing particularly. So I was coming in process of implementation of CRM first, that is customer relationship management, and then again when I joined the Naukri.com, so there was the implementation of ERP into the system. So they have basically, I think, implemented the ERP in 2008-9 into the Naukri.com. So I was a part of that process, and I going through that process, and I find it very essential and very basic processes to implement in the company, which makes the entire functions very smooth. Because what happens once we were into the sales, so we are with the customers and we want to offer a particular discount, so we have to ask to our manager or maybe a superior bosses that, sir, can we give this discount to our customers? But by implementing this process or the ERP, now the controls is with us, so we can see directly prices, what are the offers currently running, and if it is there into offer, we can directly offer to the customers. So that makes a process very fast and easy, and the data is reaching to the end person or end user very fast and effectively. So that was basically a start of my interest into these systems. And once in 2013 I wanted to start my own journey. So I started with those, processes because I had an experience into that, and I see a lot of people into the market who are in need of these systems, and they are making a losses simply because they don't have any system in place. So we tried to bridge those gaps, and put the cement on that particular holes where their profit is draining, by implementing our CRM and ERP. So from that, my journey started, and basically it's a process where you more depend on yourself, and you are more confident about yourself, that you have to be confident first. You take particular and necessary knowledge which is required for that particular business, and then you sail through. You just have to jump into the river, right? You cannot learn to swim without jumping into the river. You just start, you jump into the river, and then the rest will be taken care of.
Yes, sir. Surely. The next question is, what are the major risks which is associated with ERP systems?
Okay. So as in my presentation, I already showed that once you are implementing an ERP, it is shift from your current processes to a new process, because in many companies the data are collected manually. They are making journals or maybe notebooks where they put the data, or maybe a Excel sheet, or maybe some particular different softwares where they are managing those data. Right now you are shifting those data to a new system, and now you are making a new rules. Company also have to tune their processes to your new rules. So this is a very maybe a very delicate process where you have to handle it very delicately. If you are not handling it very properly, it might disturb your current processes, or it might have a loss of time or loss of resources with the company in terms of financial or manpower. So that is a very cautious decision which company has to take, and he has to also make sure that he puts all the resources into that for that particular process. So it is a risky process where you are shifting from a one process to another process, but simultaneously if it is implemented in a right way, it will give a tremendous payout, and your processes will be way smoother, and you can grow to next level. Because to grow to a next level, you need to have some particular system. If you don't have a system, you cannot grow. If you want to grow, you need to take this risk.
Yes, sir. Next question from a student of engineering. How much or how does ERP software cost, and what it I think what I understood it what it is its range. So can you elaborate? And I request you to share your screen, sir, if possible.
You want to see the PPT?
Yes, sir.
One second. Yeah. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the thing goes like this, as you see SSI and MSI, the small scale industry and MSI industries. So basically the ERP range starts from 2 to 3 lakhs rupees and runs up to 20 lakh, 30 lakh rupees. And if you go to a big manufacturing units like L&T or SR or any other ABB like things, so there this cost runs into crores. So maybe starting with 1.5 to 2 crores to up to 8 to 10 crores, because it's a very lengthy process. So it's basically a typical range where you start with few lakhs to few crores. So it's a vast industry.
Okay. Next question is, can you elaborate on vendor management? The I think it is a sub part of ERP module.
Yeah.
So how that vendor management, or how they, how is it useful in managing the vendors and suppliers of the organization for SSI as well as for MSI?
Okay. So as I described in my presentation, let's say you want to have some production of particular units into your company, but you don't know whether the raw material is there or not. So and if the raw material runs out, and how fast you can acquire that raw material. So this is a connected process. So once the system does its work, let's say for example, there is a particular threshold where you maintain your inventory level, and that goes below, your inventory goes below that threshold, it automatically puts order to your vendor. The vendor gets the order, and you have terms with the vendor that once you get the order, you directly supply this material to this particular warehouse. So this is a connected process if you make it, and if you make it automated, right? So it will make sure that you don't run out the raw material, and the raw material reach to you on a particular time. Secondly, you don't want to store the raw materials also. If you want to store excess raw material, you have to spend on your that inventory, plus your go down cost, your electricity cost, and cost and everything. So you want every material in just in time, which is where the Toyota implemented this process way back, and they've successfully gained the advantage of this system. So now each and every company wants the same system to be implemented in their company, where they saves on a cost, and with that cost they also make sure that they have the right raw material at the right time. So vendor management, vendor evaluation, and vendor tendering process is a part of this all exercise. And different company follows the different models, where they send an inquiry to multiple vendors that we want this material, and they gather the quotations, they compare the quotations. According to the quotations, they see the terms and conditions, then they approve the quotations, and they put the purchase order, and everything, then the process goes on. So that is a part of supply chain management, where the purchase process is integrated into this.
Yeah, next question is, according to you, how many successful ERP software installation that till now you have performed, or any technical deficiencies that is faced by firm, and how are you able to resolve that?
Okay, so particularly we have implemented around 5 to 6 ERPs in into particular companies like manufacturing companies and pharma companies. And just to share with you, there were companies who don't have the connected process. So there is one company called Satyendra Packaging in Anand. So they are basically a packaging manufacturing company, and they don't have the centralized database management totally. So due to that, their each and every department is working individually. So they don't have the idea, right? So what are their profits? So they were bleeding somewhere, like say there was manpower in excess, or maybe a manpower was underutilized, or maybe a raw material cost was higher. Their purchase department was not taking the quotations from multiple vendors, and they had some particular setup with the vendors, where they said that kind of a beneficiary setup with the vendors, with the purchase department. So by implementing this ERP, we made sure that each and every functions are operated as a vision of their proprietor, and we can stop their bleeding areas where the profit was draining, or maybe a delay was happening. Secondly, we had implemented this ERP into two manufacturing companies, like one Tulsi Fiber glass here in Baroda. Second is Galaxy uh, uh, Next Ray company. That is where we have implemented, and they had a particular problem of inventory management, because they don't know what is their current stock. So there was an incident where they had a stock of 20 lakh rupees of particular pieces, and they were not aware, and they ordered the second lot. And once the order was completed, they said that we have excess material of 20 lakh rupees. Now that part cannot be utilized in any other LED lights. So they need to scrap those parts, and they suffered a loss of around 15 to 17 lakhs into that particular order. So this is a very crucial point, where if you are able to get the right data from your system, and so that you can make the right decisions, and you can have the minimize losses. You can minimize the losses and maximize your profit.
Thank you, sir. But you know, some more questions we need to take, because I think 12:20 we will be finishing. Yeah.
Okay.
The next question is, how will a company know that a software of ERP will fit to their business requirement, either SSI or MSI?
Yeah. So it process basically goes like this. Once the company approaches us, or we approach to the company that let's make an ERP. So it's not like that, overnight this decision is taken. So we have to make sure that the ERP is right fit for that company, and as well as the management also face the same. We have to go through a chain of meetings where initially we decide the agenda of ERP, and then we go into the deep, and then we decide what the process they want to implement and what are the bleeding areas currently. So by mapping all the requirements, by taking all the data, generating a process flow, and then evaluating, and then they decide that whether this process is right for us or not. And if they feel that this process is right and we can go ahead, then we design the software. So this is not a process where one person can decide in a day. It takes around at least a month or two to make and decide the whole process and functions. So by that, we and the company also make sure that this ERP is fit to their process.
Okay. Next question is from a student of mechanical engineering. He is asking that how will we train a person
Mhm.
to work with ERP, because earlier they were working on some manually, or they are using other databases. So how will you support them to learn that this particular software?
So basically what happens during the ERP implementation process, there is one crucial part of training of their particular employees, right? So where first of all, we inform the management that you have to be very strict and very straightforward in conveying your employees that you have to follow this particular process. Because what happens in every organizations, the change, when you want to change something, there is a resistance, right? Because you are comfortable with the current process, you don't want to change, you are okay, you don't want to upgrade or something. So there are different mindset of the people. So first the management has to decide that we have to implement and we will train you accordingly. So then our trainers goes, the trainer trains them and makes them and convince them that this process are beneficiary for them, and this will benefit to the company, and this will benefit to their processes also, and that will make their work fast, easy, and also upgrade the skills of that particular employee. Because once, let's say for example, I am trained on ERP and I am putting a data into the ERP, and if I want to change a job from one company to another company, so that is my added credential, that I have worked in particular system, and I know how to utilize these systems. So that is a benefit to employee, and second thing, that is benefit to the companies also. So we have to convey in both way, and we have to convince them to adopt a new process.
Okay, sir. And somebody is asking that how a company uh, can, use your support system, or how will you support them in managing their database and all?
So as I said that it's basically a software manufacturing process, where once the process is decided, the process flow is decided, we design a software, we design the functions, we design the entry points and analytics into the software, and then we uh, implement or install that software into the central database. So this is basically a connected system. It doesn't run on different computers. It's a centralized, centrally managed system, because once you want to get a data from one department to another department, you need a centralized system. So either they have their own servers, or maybe a cloud servers, or maybe a LAN or WAN. So we implement on their servers and share the entire software system to different departments, or maybe a different plants, so that they can integrate those data and manage those data simultaneously in a real time transaction.
how is the software licensed? And I'm merging the other question also as we are running out of time.
Mhm.
And then how do you ensure the customer satisfaction? Because I think you will be having a customer from various trading or various with the various products and all.
Yeah.
So what is the key to your customer satisfaction? That is the question, because I'm clubbing two, three questions of our student.
Yeah.
And then next is how is the licensing process that ERP needs? Yeah, that
Basically, licensing processes are perpetual license or maybe supported license. In ERP, basically it's a perpetual license, but with the AMC, that you take the annual maintenance contract with those companies, right, where you manage their ERP. So what happens once you implement this ERP? After that, it is a continuous process. It's not like that you will have the same manpower for 10 years or 15 years. So manpower gets changing, so we give them a support, like so the support goes into technical terms, where if there is some malfunctioning into the software, we rectify this. Second thing, we give them upgradation, right? Because with the time they realize that this function should be upgraded. So we make changes into this particular software design and we upgrade them. And third thing, we give them a training support also. So once your particular employees are changing, so we can impart the training for particular modules. We give them ready reference material, PPTs, or maybe a videos, or maybe our physical person can train them. So we make sure that our technical support is there, because in software support is everything. Let's say for example, I have given you a software and then I am not giving you support, and if there is some mistake or some problem in the software, you cannot rectify this. You need to throw that software into the garbage, right? So this support is main. So we maintain our constant support to our customers, and by that way we make sure that our customers are satisfied and the system is running up to their expectation.
okay.
Hello, Kalpesh sir. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving some your valuable time.
Thank you.
If any students or faculty have any query
Yeah.
regarding this webinar, please contact to me, Ramesh Kumar at the rate, rameshkumar.boy@gmail.com. Otherwise, you can directly contact to Kalpesh sir. If you have any questions, we will forward to the Kalpesh sir.
Sure.
Thank you so much for giving us valuable time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Boy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Thank you, ma'am. And thank you all. Good day.
On behalf of yes, sir, on behalf of our institute, Parul Polytechnic Institute, we are a small institute in the hub of Parul University. On behalf of all the staff members, we really very thankful that you imparted such a practical knowledge to our students on the software called enterprise resource planning. And I hope that they all will be using or they all will be implementing the ideas and the processes that you have shared with them. I also want to extend my thank you and my deepest gratitude to our principal sir, Professor Jatin Vaidya, our management authorities, our MD, our managing director, Dr. Devanshu Patel, that he has given such a fantastic platform of learning in the form of scheduling webinars on the topics that a student will require to perform in the professional career. So thank you all. Thank you, Parul Management. Thank you, Kalpesh sir, for sparing your valuable time with all of us. And thank you, my head of the department, Mr. Ramesh Boi sir, who is in constant support for the staff members and encouraging us to schedule such an event. Yeah, thank you all. Thank you for joining with us.
Thank you so much. Yeah. A good day.
Yes, sir. Good day to you too.
Kalpesh sir, you can leave, sir. नहीं है madam.
Yes, sir. We can leave, or shall
Yes,
we
sir.
call Jatin?
नहीं,
Detention?
automatically it will record. We can
Okay,
left.
thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, madam.